Yeah. Okay, good evening, Erev Tov. So the few minutes that we have, talk about a fascinating question that comes up at the end of the Parsha, end of the Vayechi, end of Sefer Bereshit. There is something which the Torah leaves, doesn't really tell us the answer, which we wonder as we go through the story of Yosef and the brothers and Yaakov, and the story ends off. Did Yaakov ever know, did he ever find out what actually happened with Yosef? Not so clear. The Torah definitely explicitly does not give us an answer, meaning he knows he was in Egypt, he finds out he's there, he comes back, but did he know that it was the brothers that went and sold him, this whole process which took place? So if you look in the Psukim, we'll go through some of the sources, what we have time for, but last week when they come back, first of all, after Yosef reveals himself to the brothers, they come back and they tell Yaakov, and we spoke about it a little bit at Surah Shlishit, those who are here, that Yaakov gets told, at first he doesn't believe them, he sees the wagons, he believes, whatever it is. But the pasuk there says, "Vayidabru elav," it's called Divrei Yosef asher diber alehem. So they told him everything that Yosef told them. So seemingly, if they told him everything, they told him everything. It's the most natural question, right? When Yosef comes back, when they're reunited, Yaakov wants to know, where have you been these 22 years? What happened? How did you get there? What happened? You take the story, what's going on now with the hostages, all come back safely and speedily. But so they come back, everybody wants to know, what happened? Where were you? So we would think that he knows that they told him, and they told him the whole story, and they say, look, this is what happened all those years ago, and this is where Yosef was, and that's one way. That might be the case, but we see the story after Yaakov dies, all of a sudden the whole story opens up again, right? And the brothers come to Yosef and they make up this whole story. They say, your father said, and you swear, and this whole story that you wouldn't, Avicha tziva lifnei moto lemor. They say that Yaakov commanded before his death, Kotomru li Yosef, Ana sana pesha achecha, please go and forgive your brothers, etc. This whole thing, which didn't take place. So the Ramban over there, based on the story, he says the following. I'll read it to you. He says, "Yirei li aderech hapshat, shelo hugad liYaakov kol yamav ke'achiv machlu et Yosef." He says, until his death, Yaakov did not know that the brothers were the ones who had sold Yosef and the whole story that took place. The Ramban, he didn't know. They never told him. Chashav ki haya to'eh b'sadeh ve'motzim oto lachu u'machru oto mitzrim. He thought he went out, he was in the field, and somebody found him and somebody sold him. They were embarrassed. They didn't want to tell. The brothers didn't want to tell their father what they had done. They thought maybe he's going to curse them. Maybe he's going to get very angry. We see with the brachot. Some of the brachot are brachot. Some of the brachot are very much curses. Shimon and Levi. We'll see a bit later how Rashi understands that as well. But so the brothers were fearful. How he would react. And Yosef himself didn't want to tell Yaakov what had really happened. He says that's why they made up this whole story. Says the Ramban, this is my proof. He says if Yaakov had known what happened, what had happened, so then the brothers would have made more sense for them to go to Yaakov, to ask Yaakov Avinu to tell Yosef not to take revenge on them, rather than them having to go after he died and made up this whole story and come forward and say it, etc. So anyway, based on that's how the Ramban learns. And he says that to his deathbed, Yaakov never knew. Yosef never told him. The brothers never told him. He never knew that how this whole story had started. In fact, the Dad Skenim Balei Tosfot says, this goes so far, he says that in those 17 years, and they were there again, he says Yosef avoided Yaakov. He would never go, he wouldn't spend too much time with him, not by himself, because he was worried. He would ask him what had happened, and he didn't want to reveal. So says the Ramban. That's how he learns. Yeah. Okay, so there's a whole question. There's a big machloket in the Rishonim, in the Shbam, and others, in terms of who was it that sold Yosef. There are those who say, you're right, that it wasn't, that they left him in the pit and they didn't know what happened, and the Midyanim came and took him and sold him. There are those in the Rishonim who say, no, the brothers actually took him out of the pit and they sold him themselves. There are textual proofs this way and that way. We won't get into it now. But either way, they had this plot, or whether they sold him or they were going to sell him and they thought he was dead or whatever it was. The question is, was this whole plot that happened? They come to Yaakov and they say, we don't know what happened to Yosef. A wild animal came and okay. But to reveal what the story was, did Yaakov ever find it? According to Ramban, he never found it. According to Rashi, and Rashi, as is his way, he writes very, very brief comments, and we have to discern it from amongst what he says. But if you look through, you see Rashi throughout the entire parasha, it seems to be that Rashi understands that Yaakov knew. That Yaakov knew at a certain point, maybe he suspected them. At a later point, maybe he knew for certain what had happened. But that seems to be Rashi's approach throughout. You see this, for example, in the brachot. The brachot on his deathbed, the way what Yaakov says to his sons. So he says to Yehuda, for example, he says, Gur aliyah Yehuda, mitelef b'ni alita. So what is that referring to? Says Rashi. He says, mitelef, he says, Mima shechashaticha b'tarof toraf Yosef chayal ha'achalat. He says, when you came and you said, Yosef has been eaten but devoured by a wild animal, I was suspicious. I didn't accept it. It says Rashi, Yaakov had a certain suspicion at that point. It says also the brachot to Shimon and Levi, where he curses them, and he says, Shimon v'Levi achim, klei chamas mechaltehem. Says Rashi over there, he says, Beitzah achat. When you say Shimon and Levi achim, brothers, normally that's a good thing. In this case, it's a bad thing. You're saying they were together in their evil, in their counsel, which was wrong. So he says, Al Shem v'al Yosef, regarding Yosef. And then he says, B'rotzonam akru shor, they uprooted an ox. He says, shor is referring to Yosef, b'chol shor Yosef. So that's Rashi seems to say that Yaakov actually knew, he suspected. So when did he find out? According to Ramban, he never found out. According to Rashi, when did Yaakov realize that something was happening, and when did he understand that actually the brothers were responsible? So again, it's not explicit anywhere. That's why the Ramban and others argue with it. But there are a couple of clues, and it's interesting where Rashi learns this from. So one of the places is when right at the very beginning, when brothers come and they tell Yaakov what's happened, and it says that Yosef he refused to be comforted by Ima'en. So over there, Rashi tells us that he refused to be comforted. Ein adam yachol lekabel tanchumin al achai v'savur shemet. We've spoken about this once in the past. That normally there is a gzeira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes. How does a person comforted after somebody dies? Lo aleinu. It's the natural, the way of the world it happens. Then after some time, after Yud Bet Chodesh or however long it is, mishtakeach hamet min halev. The person forgets. You never forget, but there's a certain dimming of memory that is done in order that a person is able to be consoled and to move on with their life. But if a person's alive, well, that would never take place. So he says, "Shalamet nigzara gzera shishtakeach min halev v'lo alacha." So it's possible. So there are Mefarshim who say that after a certain period of time, exactly how long, but Yaakov realizes that he's not being consoled, that nothing's changed, that he's still in the same tense. He says, maybe something's happening. Maybe there's a reason why. Maybe Yaakov knew the rationale. Right? That's the thing. But then later on, where it seems to really come to a head, is at the point when the brothers come back when Yosef sends them back. He's now taken Shimon, and he wants them to go back and take Binyamin. And they come back, and what do they say to their father? They say to Yaakov, Yom Alehem. Sorry, they come back and they tell him the whole story, what's happened, what they said with Yosef, who again they don't at this point know yet that he's Yosef. They just know he's the viceroy of Egypt. And they say, Vanomer alav kinim anachnu lo hayinu meraglim, we weren't spies, etc. They say, Shnei masar anachnu achim, b'nei avinu ha'echad einenu. So we were 12 brothers from our father. One of us is not here. In other words, einenu, they don't say one is dead. They say he's einenu. He's not here. He's not here. What does that mean? Einenu. So we find this in a number of places. For example, when Reuven comes back to the pit, and what does he say? And he sees that Yosef is not there. Again, this goes back to the argument we saw before. But there are many who understand and seem that he was sold, that the brothers knew that they sold him. And Reuven comes and he says, "Vayomer yeled einenu." He's not here anymore. Not necessarily that he's died, but that he's not here, that he's gone. He's missing in action. So it could be that at that point, that is when all of a sudden that might be when Yaakov. There's a turning point. I saw an article written by Rabbi Posen, blessed memory, who makes the suggestion, and he says that at that point when the brothers talk to him and they say Echad Eineno, after he's already had a certain suspicion, maybe he says, hang on a sec, why are you saying Eineno? Why are you saying? Why don't you say he died? Maybe there's something more going on. Maybe there's something that you never told me. And you see, when Yaakov answers them back, maybe that's what's alluded to in the pasuk. It says, "Vayomer Aleim Yaakov Aviem, Oti shikaltem, you have made me bereaved me. Yosef einenu, v'Shimon einenu, v'et Binyamin tikachu alai hayu kolana." Says Yosef's gone, Shimon's gone. Shimon's not dead. Shimon's alive, but einenu, he's missing. Now you're going to take Binyamin, and it's going to be so. Maybe he's just asking them, or maybe he's hinting at something that actually maybe something going on. Now, 2 psukim later, he changes the language. He says, "Vayomer lo yered bnei machem ki achiv met, v'hu levado nishar u'kar ason." He says he's not going to go down. Binyamin's not going with you. His brother is dead. So it could be that what's under the surface in this whole encounter, this whole exchange, that Yaakov maybe realizes, maybe suspects, maybe he doesn't want to say it. If he's at this point going to open everything up and he's going to say, "What happened to Yosef? Did you kill him? Did you take him? Did you sell him?" So maybe he just wants to allude to that. But you can see in those very subtle changes in language, that there's something more going on below the surface. So anyway, according to Rashi, it seems that at some point, Yaakov figured it out. He knew that the brothers had taken Yosef, or that they were responsible, and whether he told them that, or he waited till later to rebuke. According to the Ramban, he never found out, and it's according to the Ramban, the superhuman strength already of Yosef, never to reveal it, never to take that revenge, never to tell his father, actually, this is what happened to me. So that's that. Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha אומר, שהקדוש ברוך הוא לזרקות את ישראל לפרח בעליהם תואר מצוות, שני מעדני חפץ מען צדקו יגדיר צרה וידע.